All right, friends, it says we have an excellent connection and that we are live. So welcome. It is 5:59 on the eastern coast of the United States. So why don't you just drop your location in the chat if you want to. You don't have to. Just tell us what you've been doing. We're among friends. I hope that you guys will connect with each other and interact with the chat. So you're welcome to ask any questions. And so it's been really busy around here. It's kind of been both busy and quiet before the big holiday. All right. All right, everybody. So what we are doing today, I'm not going to take a big, long intro. What we're going to do today is the winter star. And the reason that I chose this particular pattern to create for December is because if you want to do it in a blue or another wintry color like a dark gray, you could take this into the winter months and just leave it on your table after the holidays. So let me share my desktop. Say hello to everybody and tell us what you're working on. We are going to be working on the winter star. That is the pattern that you can download. If you see the link, it's up at the top of the chat. But if you can see, you're going to need tonight 4 12-inch squares of red fabric, which is what I'm going to be using. And we're going to be talking about that fabric choice here in a second. You need 2 border strips that are 19 inches by 2.5 for the short sides of your table runner. And then you need 2 border strips, which are 62 inches by 2.5 for the long sides. And then we are going to cut 3 snowflakes because 2 of those snowflakes are going to get cut in half. If you do not have access to a printer, I don't want you to panic because I'm going to show you how to make this stuff tonight and you don't have to worry about it. So we've got a lot of people out there. All right, friends, let me show you what's going on. All right, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go through the supplies. If you have a red fabric that's a nice bright holiday red, a tone-on-tone works great for this. This is Rock Solid by Moda. It's called Concrete Rock Solid. I love this bright red. Hi, Veronica. I see you. You're also going to need your handouts. This gives you your general supply list. And we're going to be using both fusible web and interfacing because I'm going to show you 2 different methods for making your snowflakes depending on your background fabric. And so you also have template A, B, and C, and also D because I want you to have choices. So template A looks like this, snowflake template A, snowflake template B, and the snowflake ends up looking like what you see down at the bottom, and C. And then the last image is what is called the couching image. So if you look at the table runner, on the first page of the handout, you can see that there is a very distinct star that looks like this. And this is a star that I'm going to do on a pillow because that one is a couching image. And so I'm going to do a whole separate video on how to create this exact image right here, which is that one, using yarn on a pillow. And so in the meantime, I'm going to show you how to make 3 distinct snowflakes that you could put on here. But if you want to add this exact star to your table runner and you want to do the couching method, there is going to be another live stream and I'll post that in the next few days so that you can join me for that one. And that's going to be for pillows for my daughter's living room. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So now that you have all the supplies, I'm going to show you 2 decisions that you could make. You could either use Pellon Wonder Under. So this is Pellon 805. You can buy it by the yard. And you can do the fusible method or you could use featherweight interfacing. Pellon 911 FF. So you could use either fusible featherweight interfacing for this or you could use the sticky Pellon which creates stick-on stars. But either way, it all depends on the background fabric. If you're using a fabric that's very solid looking like this one, you can go ahead and use the fusible web because you won't be able to see a pattern through the white stars. But if you want to use something like this deep red with these little stars, then my suggestion is for the interfacing method. And I'm going to show you both ways to cut your stars so that you can decide which way works best for you. All right, so with no further ado, let's jump into the project and let's get started. So for the first one, I'm going to take a plain piece of paper because your pieces that you needed for these were 12 inches for the background, and then you needed these 10-inch squares for your stars. And let me raise my camera so you can see from far away. You get a better view that way. So what we have here are 10-inch squares of white, 10-inch squares of interfacing, and 12-inch squares of the background, and I have 4 of those. The reason I cut the background into 4 squares is because when you're appliquing, you're going to want to maneuver that under your machine, and having a big long strip of fabric is not very conducive to having a good result. So that's the reason why I broke this down into 4 sections. You could have 4 pieces that are different if you wanted to use your scraps. So if you had 4 12-inch squares of red, that works fine. They don't have to be the same, but these happen to be the same. All right, so that is what you need. This fabric has been washed. It has not been pressed yet, but I'm going to press it and I'm going to show you what I do with it. All right, so we're going to take one of the 10-inch squares that has been washed, and I'm just going to give it a hard press. No steam whatsoever. You don't want any water on that. And you're just going to press it hard. And so once it's nice and flat, then I'm going to take the interfacing, and it has a bumpy side and a smooth side. And I'm going to go ahead and put it face down. And these are both 10 inches by 10 inches. But make sure to protect your surface of your wool mat. Do not press on your wool mat with this stuff. So I always have like a silicone pad you can lay on there, because I don't want to ruin my beautiful wool mat. And so I'm going to take this and I'm going to press first from the center. So I have the interfacing down here at the bottom with the bumpy side up, which has the glue. And I'm going to start in the middle of my square. And I'm going to press towards the outside with a very hot dry iron set on cotton. And if you notice, I'm avoiding the edges because my fusible interfacing hangs out just a little bit. Okay. So by pressing it carefully on the fabric side, I get less wrinkling, because what I don't want is for this fusible interfacing to get wrinkled. And then I'm just going to come back and I'm going to lightly press it from the back, because what I'm trying to avoid are any bubbles. Okay, so now that I have this, I'm going to give it a couple of seconds to cool. And I'm going to start marking. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this in half on the diagonal, right? And where's these folding instructions? If you want to carefully look on the pattern, there's folding instructions for these stars right in the center. So the first thing that you do for any of these stars is you're going to fold across here. So I'm just taking it and I'm folding it from the corner to corner, and I'm folding it like this in half on the diagonal. So that's the very first fold, is this one right here. Now if you notice, there each side on this side and this side is divided into thirds. So there's 1, 2, 3 segments and 1, 2, 3 segments. So in order to get those segments, you can just take a ruler and measure each side, right? And this should be 10 inches, so that's easy to divide. If you divide 10 inches into 3 parts, it's 3 1/3, right? So you're just going to want to take your ruler and you're going to want to do 3 inches and 1/3, and you're going to want to put a tiny little dot there. And this is another reason why I have my silicone mat. So I'm going to take 3 1/3, just like that, and I'm going to mark 3 1/3, and I'm going to put a little dot, and then I'm going to come across here and I want 3 1/3 again, and I'm going to put a little dot right there. And so I'm dividing that into 1, 2, 3 pieces. I'm going to take and I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. I'm going to take 3 1/3, and I'm going to take 3 1/3, and I'm going to put a little mark right there, just right on the outside edges. And what these are these 3 marks right here. So this is 3 1/3, 3 1/3 inches, right? Same here, 3 1/3 or 3.33, however you want to say it, 3.33 inches, because on my piece this is 10 inches by 10 inches, okay? And so you're going to want to do the same thing on the other side. These are our folding lines. And so now that I have my folding lines, I'm going to lay this over here and I'm going to fold. So I'm going to take and I'm going to fold by putting creases with my iron like this. This is the fabric side. This is the fusible side. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to fold it in half again, like this. And these are the folded edges. They're open like this. And this is the other edge. And I'm going to press it one more time. It's kind of like paper origami, right? Does anyone have any questions so far? And I don't want you to worry about these little black dots I put on there, because we are going to be cutting those off, so they won't ever show. So now that I have my snowflake folded in half this way, now I'm going to fold it along these places. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to fold 1/3. So I need to fold it into itself like this, to where that dot is, just like that. I'm going to fold it from the center to that dot, and I'm going to give it a little press. And then I'm going to bring that other dot and I'm going to connect those 2 dots together, and I'm going to fold it yet again. And so it's going to make like a little accordion. And I want all of those edges together, right? If you don't want to do it that way, you can always just fold it in half and do the entire thing like this, where both of those kiss. And you're folding one this way and folding one that way. So if you want to do it like that, you can also do it like that. But either way, we're going to try to get these to lay as flat as possible and all of those edges to line up on this side and on this side, right? So you're just pressing it, and that'll keep its shape. Okay, so now what are you going to do next? So next that you have this image, you're going to have to take and sketch this image out onto here. And you could either trace it or eyeball it, or however you want to do it. It doesn't really matter. But you're definitely going to need a very good sharp pair of scissors for this step. And so you're going to take and you're going to join those dots together, and you're going to fold these towards the back. So you just need to make sure that this lines up and that this lines up. Once that these edges line up in the back, then this right here is what you're going to trace. And so we're going to cut this off right here because this is the biggest portion of our star. So we're going to cut that off just like that. So that's waist. And now I'm going to make sure that I have this little image that I can trace, and you can do it with a pencil, you can do it with a fabric marker. It doesn't really matter because you're going to cut that part of the snowflake away. And so I can just take, you can also use a light box if you feel more comfortable doing this, but I've done it so many times that I'm just going to eyeball it. And so I'm going to come down like this, and I'm just going to give myself some kind of indication lines as to what I'm going to do with that particular star. And I'm going to come across, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to come this way, and I'm going to come up, and I'm going to do a round part. I'm also going to do a cutout on this side and a circle further down. And so now that I have my lines, I can go ahead and start cutting my snowflake. If you have arthritis in your hands, you may want to do this in 2 segments, and that is draw your image on one side and cut this side out, and then draw your image on the other side and cut the other side out. But I'm going to do it without all of that. So once I have that lined up, I'm going to go ahead and just cut my snowflake out, just like you would a little kid's snowflake. So I'm going to come like this. And like I said, if you have arthritis and you struggle with your hands, then you're going to want a different method. You can use a sharp pair of scissors. These are not it. And just trim, trim, trim all of the lines right off. And I'm coming in here and I'm trimming all of that. And that's a lot of layers, but that's okay. You can do it. Now I'm going to come this way. I had to break that down because it was a lot of bulk for me. My hands are very, very arthritic these days. And so I'm cutting it in segments, and you can do the same thing. Now that I have that, I'm going to cut this. And then I'm cutting this segment this way. Like I said, if you don't feel comfortable doing this all at one time, you can just pull the layers apart like I did, and you can just do it in segments. Okay. So now that I've cut through that top layer, you're going to start to see my snowflake bits. I'm going to come across here, and I'm going to cut that. And now I'm going to fold this in half, and I'm going to make sure that I've cut through all the layers on this other side, right? And so I'm just going to cut. And you can freestyle this. You don't have to have a snowflake that matches exactly in every segment. And so I'm just going around. And I'm cutting out here. And I'm taking another chunk out of that snowflake the opposite direction, and just kind of watch how you do it. Like I said, this is the interfacing method. This is a lot easier with the other method. So now I'm coming around here, and I'm going to come in here and trim that back layer. Like I said, if you have arthritis, you may not want to do this. If you have one of those fancy cutting machines, you can also find a snowflake template and use one of those fancy cutting machines. But in this world, I'm just using scissors. All right, so now that I have this, I need to match these two up. And I'm going to cut my snowflake on this side. And come back the other way. I'm going to cut that last layer. And the reason I use interfacing on this is because if I were not using interfacing, if this was just straight fabric, this would be a disaster. Let me trim that off. Okay. And so you start to open your snowflake and you inspect it to see if that's what I want. And I'm going to cut segments in the middle. So now I have a segment here, and I want to cut this snowflake center right here because it's too thick in this part. I'm going to cut a heart shape in the middle. I'm going to come on this side, and I'm going to cut some shapes out over here, just like you did when you were in grade school. So if any of you made snowflakes in grade school, this is going to be like a flashback to that time. Okay, and I'm going to fold this one in half and take the same chunk out on the other side. And you're just kind of playing. This is actually like I said, being back in grade school. You can take the middle and you can remove a chunk out of the middle. And if there's spots that have too much fabric, you can just fold it back on itself towards the middle and then take chunks out like that. If you have a section it's a little too tight, you can always use your little sharp snips to get in there, or your applique scissors, either way. You just want to make sure that you're getting all those little bits out of there. Here, because I'm working with several layers. There we go. Just come in on this side, and that's that little bit that's hanging on. So I removed that, and I wanted that little diamond shape there. So I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to take another chunk out. And now that I have a snowflake, I'm going to open it up and see if I like it. And I do. So now I have a snowflake that I can take and I can lay out on my background, and I can press it down. Right? So now I can take the snowflake and I can press it, and then I can attach the snowflake either by hand or by machine. If you want to come in here and clean up your snowflake because you don't like it, you can come in here and clean it up and cut some bits and pieces out of it. But you can do any shape that you want on this snowflake. And that's the interfacing method. And like I said, that's harder on you if you have arthritis. The other method for making snowflakes is actually the fusible web method. And let me get all of these things out of the way. Thankfully, I have a trash can close by. And let me show you how to do the same exact thing, but do it with fusible web. So the first thing that I'm going to do this with fusible web is I'm simply going to trace this image, and I could pick any of them that I want. And this is a 10-inch square. So I'm going to cut that up using paper scissors because this is Pellon. And I'm going to simply fold that in half, in half again, And then I'm going to fold it in thirds so I can go towards the middle and towards the middle, just like that, right? Once those are in the middle, I can fold it back on itself, and I'm going to trace that star. And like I said, if this is too much, you can simplify your snowflake and make it just like this. And then we could draw that same design directly on the paper. So we could take, we're going to cut a little circle like a holly berry. We're going to come down. We're going to make another little circle, come down, connect it, right? So you're just freestyling this. You're going to do a stick with a holly berry, come back. You're going to go this way. You're going to do another stick with a holly berry, come back, a stick that way. And you're just going to design this to be whatever you want it to be. So we're going to go this way and that way. And so now that I've got my little snowflake design, I'm going to fuse this on the back of a white 10-inch by 10-inch piece. Okay. So my 10-inch by 10-inch piece, I'm going to give it a hard press. Like I said, these have been washed already because what I don't want is for these appliques to pucker up after I've washed them. Can you use a friction pen? Absolutely. You can use any kind of pen that you want. And so now that I have this, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to stick it on the back. And that's already on there. And I'm going to press it. So you're going to design the snowflake of your choice. You can make little angels, little hearts. And we're just going to draw lines on here again. So back to the beginning. This goes in half on the diagonal, right? In half again. And I've got a little bit less bulk this time because I'm only going to do it to the middle. But you can do it however you want to. Like I said, if you've got some big monster scissors and you've got great hands, got young people hands, then feel free to do whatever you want. All right, so now that I've got that snowflake folded, this one's a little bit bigger, we're just going to start cutting. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this outside edge so that it has a fringe. So I'm going to cut like this, just like a spiky fringe. So I'm going to go up and down with a little sawing motion. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a snowflake that has a spiky outer edge. All right. Then I'm going to start cutting away bits that I don't want. So I'm going to cut away this section. Maybe I'm going to cut away this section. And like I said, feel free to do whatever you want. This snowflake is like a freestyle snowflake. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to come to the inside of this. And you won't see these lines because they're on the paper. So once I remove the paper, those lines are going to be gone. And look at me, I'm so stubborn. I keep wanting to cut these little circles. A third way that you could do this, if you're wanting to be more careful, is you could do the paper part only and trim it up, and then you could fuse it to the back of your fabric and use that as lines to needle turn all of this. And once upon a time when I was a spring chicken, I used to love needle turn. Back in the day, not anymore. Anybody else love needle turn? I mean, it has its place, and needle turn is really pretty, but I just don't have that much time these days. Working full-time and being a full-time grandma, it's a lot of stuff to do. Oh, this year I'm lucky because I have delegated Thanksgiving to my adult children. Hee-haw. Anybody else doing that? All right, let me see. Now that I've cut this up, and I've got all of these little bits trimmed off of there, now I can open it up, voila, and I'm getting closer to the snowflake of my dreams. Yes, I am. And so now you can see the snowflake has a big chunk in the middle, and so what I'm going to do is a star. So I need to come in here and finish it. So I'm just opening to see it. Instant gratification, right? Ta-da! Need to come in here and chop and remove that segment, and then chop some more. And then I'm going to come back on the other side and give it another chop towards the middle, just like this. And now I'm ready to fuse the big snowflake. All right. Let's move all this mess. And let's open her up. And you can come in here if you have any little strings hanging or any things that are loose bits. You can always just stick your baby scissors in there and trim those up to make them nice and clean so that you don't have any ravelly or frayed edges. Because now, my friends, take your little snippers. Just clean up those little edges just like that. Don't be afraid to freestyle and do whatever you want with this snowflake. This is your snowflake, and every snowflake is unique. So it doesn't matter what you do to it, it's your snowflake. So I'm just coming in here to clean that up. Clean up these edges, and now this little lady is ready to be fused. If you want to come in here and nip some of the stuff out. Maybe I want this side to be a little bit trimmed like this. You can do that. You can just shape it after you're done. Maybe I want the opposite side to be the same. Kind of like at an angle, like a peak like of a cathedral and a church. Right? And so I'm just cutting away the bits that I don't like. And I'm just giving it a shape. If you want that little middle out, all you have to do is fold it all back together like this. And you can just take a little semicircle out of that center like this. And you'll end up with a little bit in the middle that's missing. And I kind of like how that's looking. So that's looking pretty good to me now, right? I've got a couple of peaks, I've got a couple of valleys, and I've got a shape of a snowflake. So now I'm going to do what we always do when we have a snowflake. So Tammy, you tried to give Thanksgiving back to your daughter and she gave it back to you. Well, I'm doing a bunch of the cooking. I'm just driving the stuff over to my daughter's house. But somebody needs to take over Thanksgiving because Mom is getting tired. So then you're just going to do what you normally do with fusible web. And you're going to take and you're just going to remove all of that paper backing. So you remove all that paper backing, then you are ready to put this on your block. Look at this. Remove all that paper backing. And it will be a delight to see. Is there paper left on any of this? No, I feel paper. So you have to really take your time and put on your glasses, people. Because my eyes are getting worse for the wear these days. Okay, Look at that. I've got all of the paper off of there, and now this is ready to go. So I'm just going to take my 10 by 10 square, and of course I want to find the middle. So I'm going to press it, and I'm going to fold it into fourths, because this is a 10 by 10 snowflake and this is a 12 by 12 square. So I'm going to take that square, and I just needed to find the middle, and now I'm going to center that snowflake. Voila, right there. If there's any of that fusible that peeks out because it got pulled out, just tuck it back. Nothing, no harm, no foul. Just remove a little bit of that fusible. If you don't get it covered every square inch, you can always use a glue stick. And you're going to want to make sure that you leave at least about a ½ inch on these edges so you can center it like this. So where these lines are centered, but you're going to want to have at least 10 inches on either side. And then my suggestion for this is to not sew it down until you have all of your blocks, because then you can quilt and applique at the same time. So once you get your quilt sandwich done, then you can take your darning foot and go around all of these outside edges of this. I'm going to press it. Make sure you use your silicone mat, friends, because otherwise you're going to have a mess on your hands. So use that silicone mat and press that. Put some heat on that. And now I'm going to flip it so that it sticks. And I'm going to press it from the back side, because what I don't want is for that big giant snowflake to have little bits sticking up. So whenever you have a piece, an applique that has a bunch of little tiny edges, you're going to want to definitely press from the back and not from the front. Oh no, some people miss it. Lisa, you miss cooking holiday dinners? I mean, I'm still cooking, but I'm gonna do some of it at the house and then some of it at her house. All right. So now we can peel it back. Voila! And we have that snowflake in the middle. If you have any edges that stick up or are not adhered completely, you're just gonna lift this up and you're gonna glue them down like this. And so if you have any bits that did not stick, just going to lift that and glue it down. And then you're going to give it another good press, and your snowflakes, voila, are finished. Now, how are we going to use the couching one? So the couching one, if you've never used a couching foot, is for sewing down threads onto your fabric. So for the couching pattern, and let me pull that one up. This one right here is you would take and you would use a chalk pencil, or you would use another kind of pencil, and you're going to need to make this a little bit bigger on your copy machine. So you're going to have to print this at about 110, and you simply draw this image straight onto your fabric, and you can use your couching foot and sew yarn down into each of these. So if you want to do it that way, you can. If you want to do it with little skinny bits of bias, you can. And they also make this little teeny tiny heat and bond for hems. So if you wanted to cut little strips of fabric that were little teeny tiny strips and just make this entire shape, you could also do it that way. Or you could buy the little teeny tiny skinny bias tape that they sell that's pre-fused. So any way that you wanted to make this image would be perfectly fine. And I'm going to do that on a separate evening because that's a whole separate video. So you could use glitter. Guess what else you could do if you wanted to? You could buy puffy paint. You could trace this onto your background, and after you quilted the table runner, you could actually put this design with puffy paint straight onto your fabric. So you could do whatever you want. Yes, you could use glitter fabric for your snowflake. You could do anything you wanted. But these, if you want to see what they look like, are super fun. Like I said, if you wanted to cut the paper on all of these are templates that I made. And if you wanted to see what these look like on paper, you could actually sew right through the fabric and then trim the edges off later. So you could go like this. And you fold that in half. You fold that in half again. These are folded in a third, so you would fold it to the inside. And you would fold it to the inside again, like this. Then you would fold this to the inside, and this to the inside again. And then you would trim away everything you don't like that's sticking out. See, these gray areas are the areas that I designed to be removed. And you could get as fancy or as simple as you want. This particular design is super simple. And you're just going to cut away these little bits that are gray. You could also use these as quilting lines if you wanted to. So once I have this, you could simply pin that down onto your paper, onto your fabric, and you could use those as quilting lines. So if you wanted to take any of these designs, just like this, and you wanted to trace those onto your fabric, you could. But this is what this snowflake was designed to look like. Like I said, if you want to use no interfacing, if you want to just starch your fabric and try to cut out your snowflakes, then you could simply use a little bit of Elmer's glue and glue it down if you wanted to, or use a little bit of a glue stick. There's a bazillion ways to make this. So all you have to do is play with a little bit of scrap fabric and see what it looks like for you. So this is what it looks like for me. Like I said, you could always lay this down and trace it using one of those Cricut machines that lets you scan stuff. So you could cut out your snowflakes out of dark paper and then scan it with your Cricut machine and then let your Cricut machine cut the fancy snowflakes. So all you've got to do is work with those and see what you have. So like I said, I've given you several templates. This is one of the templates. This is another template. And then you have template C and B, and you can cut whatever you want out of those. So you don't have to just stick to one snowflake. Like I said, you can cut this one out like this. And the choice is yours. I mean, I just give you tools and then you decide what you want to do with them. Right? Just like that. Cut all the excess off. The lighter the interfacing, the better. Does anybody have any questions about how to make their stars? And then after that, you just put them on your fabric. Like I said, I'm probably going to invest in those spring-loaded scissors because my little arthritic fingers don't want to cooperate with me these days, but I have more time on my hands these days than I used to, and so I'm going to keep playing until I get what I want. And the purpose of all of this is for you to just develop your own creative flair and make whatever you want to make. My goal is not for you to have all the identical things to what I make, but for you to make something that you want to make. Question, Dan says, can you give us a list of ideas that will work for the snowflake? For the snowflake, like I said, you can trace it on and cut it out onto dark paper. If you want to print it like on dark paper, you can scan on a Cricut machine. Your other way of making the snowflakes is with fusible. The third way is with interfacing like I did in the first one. And the another way that you could do is for you to literally do what I'm doing right here, which is cut out the paper and then pin that to your fabric and cut it out that way and use it as a needle turn template. So you could actually draw onto your fabric and then you could use that to needle turn. So if you really wanted to needle turn applique this entire snowflake, you could. And so there's lots and lots of ways that you could do this. Like I said, glue, pins. You can cut these little things out just like this and then trace them directly onto your fabric as a snowflake like this so that you could cut out a single layer like that. And so this one is very skinny, but it looks like this. And so if you wanted your snowflake to have this much detail, you would literally cut, just like I did, get your paper template, and you could trace this straight onto your fabric, like someone said, with a friction pen. And so you could use needle turn. Somebody said, what is needle turn? Is there another name for the couching foot? Yes, it's called a cording foot. And so the couching foot has a little channel, and what it looks like is it looks like this, but it has a little groove in the bottom, and that way when you're sewing and you're zigzagging over the yarn, it holds the thread or the yarn in place for you. And so it could be called the cording foot or the couching foot. All right, friends, if you have watched the Gnome of the Month, there's an entire thing on needle turn applique, but needle turn applique, you would simply trace this onto your fabric and you would cut and leave a 1/4 inch spot, and you would turn that under with your needle and you would stitch around in applique. But if you want to do anything that looks like this, like I said, don't be afraid to play with paper and play with your scraps and then see how it works out for you. But here, friends, are the designs that I came up with. You can blow them up, take them to a copy center and make them bigger. They're free for you to use. And then this, my friends, is the one I'm going to be blowing up big and putting on a pillow and using my couching foot, but that's going to be a totally separate video. Okay, friends, that's all for now. Like I said, if you cut it out like this, you can always use this skinny heat and bond hem stuff. And then you are ready to go. All right, friends, I hope you have enjoyed this. Maybe you're going to play with this, or maybe you're scared. Either way, I hope you enjoy it. If nothing else, you can use the paper templates to have the grandkids or your nieces and nephews cut out a bunch of snowflakes and decorate for the holidays. All right, friends, I hope you guys have enjoyed this particular tutorial. This is not for the faint of heart, so if you want to get out there and you want to challenge yourself, this is a challenge activity. All right, everybody, it's 6:47 and I have to get going because I have to get up early and go to work tomorrow. But I've got a couple of other things that we're doing. I'm showing you guys how to make a little wallet that you can put gift cards or credit cards in from start to finish. Let me see what else is on the calendar coming up just so you guys can see. If you have not been to the Facebook page, I'm going to share my desktop so you can see. You can go to the Jelly Roll Club meeting room if you're not in there. But there are several things that are happening. We have the little card wallet coming up, and that's on Sunday, November 26th. So it's going to be easy peasy. You're going to be able to make like a dozen of those in like 2 hours to give as gifts. The other thing that we have, the little card wallet uses a couple of fat quarters, but you can use Jelly Roll scraps as well, and Pellon SF 101. But you can see that in the meeting room, and I've also linked that under quick and easy gifts on the website. You can go on there and you're going to be able to see all the things that we're doing. Groovy little wallet, tiny little stockings, and little snowman ornaments. So I did that so that you guys can see what's going on. Oh, you've been waiting for wallets. Yes, we're going to be making wallets on Sunday, November 26th. On Sunday, December 3rd, we're going to be making the tiny little stockings at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and then I have another live stream at 6 for the plant lady, and then we're making little snowman ornaments on December 17th. So I hope that you're going to join me for those. Those are quick and easy, and I'm going to add more patterns to my website, and you guys will be able to make lots of things. All right, friends, don't forget to share the channel with your friends who love quilting and making fun things. My name's Yvonne. This is the Jelly Roll Club. I should have said that at the beginning. But anyway, I appreciate you joining me, and I will see you guys next Sunday. I'll see you guys then. Bye-bye.